Alors le IIRC, je suis obligée de le dire en anglais parce qu'il n'y a pas de français, hein, c'est ça.
Effectivement, un acronyme.
This is a complex acronym, and I'm going to talk about an international approach between the companies, NGOs, civil society, something very positive and a long-term approach. It's integrated reporting. What is it? The vision we have of the company is partial only. It's you have a vision on the financial components on the one hand, and on the extra financial components on the other hand. A vision for investors, another speech for customers, another speech for employees, and then another one for the civil society. However, because of the crisis of 2008 and 2011, this vision of the company is archaic. We cannot just have a silo approach, a silo vision, and see the company as a player, a stakeholder in the society, just seen from the financial viewpoint or another angle. We should be able to rate companies based on the value creation around or for societies, and that is to say the shareholders, but not only the shareholders, the employees, customers, and the communities. So why do we think at an international level about this integrated reporting? You have a lot of standards, local and international. Local with accounting standards, environmental standards, and for us, we would like to think over a new model of communication around the value creation and the business model of a company. I hope it works. What is integrated reporting? It's a process, first and foremost, within the company where we're going to incorporate or integrate all departments of the company. This approach was initiated in 2010 within the IRRC, and you have the first companies producing integrated reporting. Those companies producing integrated reporting reports, all of them say that it's possible this way to have a better link and communication between their own departments. Each department, each business model, we see that for a company there is not just a single business model, but you have business models with different business units, and how can each business unit help create value at an overall level. If you take Vivendi, we saw in the media in France, Vivendi had several business models. How can we aggregate all these business models while creating value within the same company? And then you have the production of the yearly report. How many people here have read corporate reports? Maybe 2/3 will say yes. If I ask you whether you have read the complete report, I'm almost convinced that 3/4 of hands are no longer going to be raised. Why? Because no one, except for investors who need to read the yearly reports thoroughly, they want to have a summarized information highlighting the real components of the business model and the strategy. So the idea behind the integrated reporting is to communicate not any longer on the past, the financial components of the company, the extra financial dimension of the company, but let's see how the company is going to position itself in the future in its ecosystem, is going to define a strategy in order to create added value. And this yearly report should be thinner. For the time being, yearly reports are about 1,000 pages. The registered documents are extremely thick. How can we reduce this information so that it is useful? It gives you the right level of information. You concentrate on the significant information while giving reliable, fair, and sustainable information. And I will come back to the indicators and the measurement and the valuation of the different actions of the company. How have we been working to define this reference framework? Because what matters today is to say that how can we work in order to define a reference framework of this integrated reporting? We didn't want to define another standard. A lot of standards already exist. We want to start from a volunteering approach. Since 2010, we created IIRC under the aegis of Prince Charles. Because we focused on environmental issues, and under the patronage of Prince Charles, we worked jointly with large companies, international companies, and investors. We didn't want to ask investors which type of information they needed to have, and then ask the NGOs what they were interested in, and then the companies. But we said, okay, let's gather everyone around the table, and let's produce the right reporting, giving a concrete and actual vision of the added value for the society and the transformation of this capital. So this led to reference framework, and the first version was published in 2012. You have a new version or release. There were different working groups, and a new version was issued on the 16th of April 2013. This version is public now. You can find it on the website of IIRC, and companies taking part in this approach, plus all representatives, institutional investors and NGOs, were invited to criticize this first version of the reference framework in order to improve it. This consulting period ended in July, and you had a corrective phase to improve this reference framework, and then the reference framework will be published in December 2013, publication of this reference framework on integrated reporting. And here, this is not the end. So it's a reference framework. It is a voluntary approach on the part of companies. They can take just a part of this reference framework and also the complete framework if you do not need, for the time being, to apply all principles and criteria of this integrated reporting if you want to have the stamp. What is integrated reporting? As I have said to you, this is a bit complex this is a bit complex. We're talking about the value creation of the company, the way the company is going to use the 6 types of capital use. Not all 6 types are going to be used. Some companies are going to use human capital more than social capital. Other companies will use the industrial capital rather. It all depends on the initial business model of the company. But the idea is to clearly identify within the integrated report and within the company which strategy as a manager I wish to highlight in order to change and to value those 6 capitals and create values based on these 6 capitals for all populations I've mentioned at the beginning of my speech. Then we'll have to describe the activities. The value created for each business. For instance, in the extra financial report, what do we find for the time being? A nice section on actions conducted by the foundation, corporate foundations, or you find information on the training of employees or indicators on training of employees. So that's very interesting to know that company A trains so many hours each year, or per employee. Each employee received so many hours of training. But what is the contribution for the employees? Same for communities. Companies on their market issue shares. Takes actions in order to help local communities with food programs. But what is the added value for the company? You have an added value for the community. This is easier to measure. But what is the return on investment for the company of such actions? And this is what we want to develop within this integrated report. We want to give a transverse vision, a cross-business vision around the added value. So let's recap. You have criteria on profit, social criteria, environmental criteria. You convert that into an investment for the company, but what would be the benefits for the company? The priority, that's investors. Investors have the priority, but the report should be legible and concise. Why? Because all populations involved, interested in the company, should understand the business model of the company.
In 2010, we know that there's a surplus in certain activities that is decreasing. We discovered this from one day to the next because company A or company B suddenly had difficulties, financial difficulties. So this is not possible now anymore. We need to give all populations, including staff, a vision, a visibility on the company strategy, and mostly on the way in which there needs to be an interaction with ecosystem. So what you're saying, this is typical of capitalism. You need long-term indicators and encourage companies to have this vision. Yes, absolutely. These companies have to give a long-term vision, not what I'm going to do in the 6 months to come, but how am I going to invest in the years to come. And so, Alexandra, you'll say companies' information is confidential. So what do the companies tell you? The answer, we have a pilot program with 103 companies in the world. You have Coca-Cola, another company in Brazil, Eskom in South Africa. South Africa is really into IR. They have that in their standards. The Joburg Stock Exchange market has this. And we have investors also who are involved. And what companies tell us are, help us, please, help us. Is this creative? The answer, yes. They are quite creative and imaginative when they come to implement this. They say, this is the future. We need to evolve. We cannot just produce fake reports that nobody reads or hardly. We need to progress. But then, how can we do that? For instance, how can we select the right level of information in the integrated reports? For instance, right now on company strategy, why should I highlight the strategy on one particular business unit versus another business unit? Why? Because the environment will evolve and it'll have a greater impact for one of the given business units. So this is a volunteer. This is an approach that is a conscious approach, but it doesn't mean that we shouldn't we should hide the rest of the information. No, we need to highlight the information that is crucial. You're saying that the company is afraid of confidential information. Well, what about training for the staff? The answer. Well, on training, that's true. On environment, on actions, foundations. What they want is to communicate. It's their strategy they don't want to communicate. The issue is the sustainable strategy. Am I going to be answerable in the future? In other words, as in charge of management in the company, to have staff and customers who in 5 years' time are going to sue me saying, you said this 5 years from now and this didn't happen. You lied. So there's a lot of work to do around this with the different companies. And there's also a lot of work to be done with the people who will give assurances on this, the certifiers. If you want credibility in these reports, you're going to need an outside look to assess integrated reporting. But we are at the beginning of this. Those are the next steps for implementation. So December 2013, the first framework, international framework, will be published, and then the next steps, what are they? In the different countries, we're going to help them implement. SAP already published their integrated reporting. It's a version, it's a number one version, version 1.1. ESCOM in South Africa, they published their IR. So how are we going to be able to help the companies to also pool all of the business units around integrated reporting? I am in charge of French companies, French markets, and I have all of the corporate social responsibility directors who look into this. They like that. They like it very much. The financial directors like that much less, but they all say, how on earth are we going to help? How can we convince the boss of a business unit to work on integrated reporting? That is the challenge that we're going to have to pick up in the months to come. And you're talking about a volunteer approach. Yes, absolutely. The idea is to say that the stakeholders must agree. The players must agree before there are standards. We want investors, companies to dialogue, enter into dialogue. I heard the different speakers. They criticized finance as a whole with a capital F. I agree. What we want is to work with all of the different players. In the world of companies, you need investors. We need to give them all a better vision. So we're going to work together in an integrated way and in a working together. Thank you very much.